Hi, I'm Dawn with K-Square Technologies. Welcome to our monthly webinar training series. Today's session is on tips and tricks for you to be able to create and deliver more attractive and effective presentations in PowerPoint. We're going to be looking at a variety of different techniques in Microsoft PowerPoint, including, I think, one of the most important ones, and that is how can you save time and create more consistent slides by using the Slide Master. How can we make it easier to create slides with Designer? PowerPoint has some built-in tools, including stock images, that can save you time and give you the opportunity to create very attractive and appealing slides by simply using these built-in tools. And for those of you who've been using PowerPoint, maybe for years, what are some options to organize with sections and a tool in PowerPoint called Zoom? And once we had all that put together, how can we leverage some of the handy presentation shortcuts to elevate your skills as a presenter? So those are some of the topics that we'll be covering in our time together. But let's visit that Slide Master and spend just a little bit of time with that. The Slide Master, it's important to know that this is the blueprint of your presentation. This is where all the important things go on. And that means every presentation has a Slide Master underneath it. So even if you start creating a brand new blank presentation, it has a Slide Master. Now, some presentations have more than one. What the Slide Master does is it stores your choices for the text, for the background, layout, graphics, things like the font size, and style for your titles and other key elements. How will your bullets look? What's the color scheme? All of these things come from the Slide Master. Now, many people have been using PowerPoint for years and may never have touched or even addressed the Slide Master. Instead, we're wasting a lot of time by manually formatting individual slides. And the challenge too in a lot of organizations then is that we can have a lot of inconsistent formatting, and we really aren't matching the branding and the look and feel that we want within our organization. So we're going to explore that as well. So let's go ahead and start working hands-on in exploring what these different tools can do for you in PowerPoint. I'm going to start off here with a pretty simple presentation. And with this, we have, as you can see here, we've got a title slide, and here's a content slide. And we've got some consistency. So make note, for instance, here is the color scheme, the logo, the appearance of the text, the bullets. All of these things are coming in from the Slide Master. All of these things are elements of the Slide Master that where it's built in. What is the font? What is the appearance? What size is it? And so on. So this then makes it really easy if we, for instance, choose to, under the Home tab, we want to create a new slide. Well, these slides are in the Slide Master. So what does the title slide look like? What's the option when you go to title only? What's a blank slide look like? All of these things are already set up for you. Now, in some organizations, unfortunately, what happens instead is that if you have like a master template, then that sometimes ends up being just a presentation where a lot of manual formatting has been applied, and you're simply instructed to copy slides forward as you need them. And so that takes a lot more work if you really wanted to leverage that slide master. That is, in that case, it's really more manual formatting. And so understand that manual formatting overrides all of these different slides. And that's why we can end up with a slide that looks like this, or one that maybe isn't quite so bad, but you'll notice that there's some changes here. The title has been centered, it's bold, it's a different font, we have different bullets here. And so all of these things can impact the quality of your presentation. And it takes away from an effective communication. So where do we find the slide master? What does this look like? How can we make these kinds of changes without having to spend a lot of time? So first of all, what I'd like to just show you is I mentioned, manual formatting overrides a slide master. And that could be something as simple as if I select this title, for instance, maybe I want to make this bold, I'll make it larger, and I'll make this a different color. So just so it stands out, I'll choose this bright red. So that is then a manual preference that's only impacting this one slide. And we can waste a lot of time if we have to go to every single slide and make that same change. To find out to work with the slide master instead, that is, if this is what we wanted, we'll look at that under View. And in View, here is Slide Master. Now, although we won't be touching on it today, just know that there also are masters for how you do handouts and your speaker notes. So these can also be modified. But let's dig into that slide master here. So with this, what we see is our primary master and then others as well. So if I hover over this one, I can see this is the title slide layout, and it's used by slide 1. Or my title and content layout used by many of the slides that are in this presentation. There could be masters or slide layouts that we don't even use. So for instance, this vertical layout is probably not one that we use, and I could actually remove that. I could right click on this, for instance, and delete that layout. Notice other options like renaming a layout so you can have something be a little bit more descriptive, for instance. But let's go back to and explore how this can help us. So here we have this primary layout. And what if I did in fact want to change that title a little bit? So I can select that placeholder. And from that, make the changes, for instance, maybe bold. And I'd like this to be this dark shade of green. Now, in doing so, notice how this is fed forward into the other layouts. And so this is how we can get consistency across our presentation, but we're changing it in the slide master, not in the presentation itself. So it's quite possible you may have presentations where it makes more sense for you to build them or rebuild them from scratch than to keep copying slides forward over and over again, because you're also copying forward some of the mistakes and some of the different problems that those might have with it. So I made just this one change. Now there's a lot of other things that we could do here, but know that anything you put in here should be that is, I wouldn't put the actual text for the title in here because this is just the foundation of our presentation. Let's switch back. Now, a couple different ways I can do that. Here I could go to Slide Master and say Close Master View, or I could go to View and switch to Normal. So notice then that that color change, that change to that title, making it bold and green, has been inherited then by all of the slides that were associated with that slide master. However, the ones that had manual formatting, those did not change. This one changed partially. It picked up the color change, but because manually that title had been, the font had been changed, that did not change. So we have a few things here that we could fix. Know, first of all, that with the slide master, by making that one change to the title, we're able to impact the entire presentation. So that can be a big time saver for us. But what if you have these slides that you know were maybe they were copied in, or you have multiple people working on it and you want to change it. Well, this can be a huge time saver for you. Here's what we do. One option is I can select the slide, right click on it, and then choose Reset Slide. So watch what happens. It's reset to the layout within the Slide Master. Here's another one. Another way to get this is select the slide. We can select more than one, but you may find it works better for you to do one at a time, just because in some cases it may be a slide you just have to completely rebuild depending upon where it came from, how it was built. And so here I find this under the Home tab, and here is Reset. So watch the magic. I simply select it and it's reset. I've got the bullets, I've got the title, now it looks so much better. And finally, we'll go to this one as well, and we could continue with any others that need to be reset. So that is then the value of the Slide Master. I have taught PowerPoint for over 20 years, and I would say typically when I survey a class that we have anywhere from 80 to 90% of the participants that have never worked with the Slide Master. And I hope you can see the value of being able to leverage this to create consistency in your branding and also in the quality of your presentation. So definitely explore that and look at how you would be able to build then more effective, more consistent presentations by simply taking advantage of that Slide Master. One of the other tools that we have that's built into PowerPoint is called the Designer. So the Designer is also, we see it as design ideas. This is something that we don't see, that you'll only have if you have PowerPoint 365. So part of the Microsoft Office 365 suite. Here's the idea of it. Here I have a pretty simple title slide. Now, so we don't have to have a very, we'll say, intriguing topic. It could be something that, is still important. And with this then, it's a nice layout, but I could even make this more interesting. So how do we do that? Well, with the slide selected, and in fact, I'll go to the second one. This is just a copy of it. And that's one of the things you'll hear me say is that you want to make copies of these so that if you don't like the results, you can always go back to them. And in the Home tab, I'm going to go over here to the right-hand side and pick Designer. And this will open this up. Now, it's going to generate different design ideas for me from this selected slide. So we can see that it might just be that we want a little bit different option for us in terms of how we work with it. It could just be a little bit different layout. And so it might not be anything too extraordinary here, but then that is a way for us to take advantage of and get some different layouts. So the thing to know too is the design ideas work with most of your slides. They work with your blank presentation as well as many presentations built off of standard templates in PowerPoint. If you don't see it available, but you do have PowerPoint 365, know that this could be because the particular template you're working with doesn't support it. Now, if that's the case, you can still create slides, but you might need to do it from a blank presentation and then copy them into your presentation. Let's look at another example here. I'm going to move back to this one and do a Control D for duplicate. And I'll add as well an image to this, just so that we can see how this will trigger or how it will work. So I'll just choose Insert here. And something that we're going to dive into in a little bit more detail here is our stock images. So I'll go to Pictures and Stock Images. And let's just say that I'll put it here, Globe. So from this, I'll just simply go ahead and pick an image that I want to work with then, and we'll add this in, insert, and what you'll see here is the artificial intelligence with this design ideas is now suggesting to us different options. Maybe this is the one that I want, and it even has some animation for it. Or we could continue forward and see a variety of different options and choices. And we don't have to be a graphic artist. We don't need to know all the different ways this is created. That's the value of the designer. Let's walk through and look at a couple other options in terms of what's possible. So here, for instance, we have then just a simple bullet list. And we can see over here with the ideas is, well, maybe, how about this? Notice the artificial intelligence. It's even giving us icons based upon the words that it's finding in the text. Or because it's a process, it's showing us some other possibilities. So notice in a few minutes how the designer can create attractive, effective slides that can be a lot more interesting than just having this standard bullet list. So those are some other things to explore or to consider. And keep in mind, Control D if you want to play around with it, Control D for duplicate. That gives you the flexibility to just kind of see, which ones do I like? It can be a lot easier in terms of exploring your options. So many different options in terms of how you might take this information and make it more appealing. Now you always have the option as well. Let's just say, for instance, this looks pretty good, but if I wanted to, I could select this and you'll notice this icon comes up. So I could change this little tag. I could change that icon and you can see that there's other possibilities here. And from this, we can see it comes into our stock images. And if I put in the word award, let's see if it comes up. Yeah, so maybe I pick this one instead. And notice how that will be added to it. So you have the flexibility to control what these look like as well. Here's another example. Perhaps you have images that are various products. It could be people in your organization, maybe different sites, locations, anything that you might have. Well, rather than spending a lot of time trying to lay them out in a particular way, all we'll do is we'll go to Designer again. So Designer is either in the Home tab of the ribbon or it's in the Design tab in PowerPoint. You'll see it over on the right-hand side. So if I trigger that Designer, notice what happens. All I had to do was just insert these images. And now there's all sorts of possibilities of how we could lay these out. And you can, once you do that, you could still modify these on your own if you want to, but you can see the wide range. You don't have to know how all of this happened, but the ability to be able to easily create a much more interesting image rather than just trying to randomly move those slides around. Let's try another one. Control D to duplicate. That's always good when you're experimenting. And in just basically a couple clicks, now those images go from here to here. And it gives us a really nice layout, whatever we want to focus on. So where will you use that? What will be helpful for you? Yet another example. I'm going to duplicate this again. And we have here just not only is it a bullet list, but it has dates in it. So the artificial intelligence is able to detect that and offer to us some different ways to show the timelines. Now, this isn't like a project management program. Know that these are not, the intervals are not consistent with those gaps in those dates. but at least it can give you an interesting way of presenting this information. Or you could simply just get a different kind of way of listing it. So how would that be helpful for you? What types of results are you seeing there? So here's another way that this could be presented. Once again, we could have these icons, and maybe some of these ones here, I want to change this one. And now I could simply say, well, I like that one. It might be just as simple as just picking a different one from the list. And here we have another use of the design ideas where an image was added. And then this was a suggested option. So explore the designer to give you really some different ways for you to be able to quickly create some very professional looking images. And hopefully you'll find that that's a really helpful for you. Some other graphics, we'll continue exploring and working with that. Now I have customized my quick access toolbar so that, typically it sits up at the top here and doesn't have a lot of options. And I've done a couple quick things. So just this is something you can explore on your own, but if in this drop down arrow here, I've added some different tools. And I've also added other tools so that I can easily change my view and switch around. So by that, I mean that, for instance, here, I'll remove this one just so that you can see. So I'll right click and remove. Under the View tab is Switch Windows. I'll right click, left click, add it to the Quick Access toolbar. And by the way, the reason why it's below the ribbon is under the drop down here is the options show above or below the ribbon. So this gives me the ability to easily switch between different open files, and that can be helpful as well. And that just want to explain what I'm doing and not just be switching around. So here I have another presentation, and I'd like to use this as an opportunity just to show you how Smart Art works. And so with the Smart Art, we can have something as simple as just a list, a bullet list. It could be more involved, but we don't want to have sentences. And that's one of the things to keep in mind in PowerPoint. Phrases, not sentences. But Smart Art is a way for us to take that and make this much more interesting. Much more interesting. And it's also built into PowerPoint. So here again, we don't have to be a designer, but we can get a lot more value. So what does this look like? Well, you're going to find this under the Insert tab. And with that is Smart Art. Now explore then what it is that you want to show. What kind of graphic? Is it a list? Is it a process? What are some different options that you have there? So in this case, you might just have a list of choices, or it could be a process, steps 1, 2, 3, etc. So let's see what that might be. I'll just pick one of these, and we can click into the text and start building it that way. Or in this ribbon, now sometimes we have a contextual ribbon tab when the Smart Art is selected. Here I'm going to open up the text pane, and I can click on that, or this little arrow that's just typed in here. So this is how I can build this content. And now I have a way to be able to show this process rather than just having it be a bulleted or numbered list. And I can close this. We can drag it out, make other changes to it. That's the idea of Smart Art. Now, once you have that, you might change your mind. Maybe you want a few other things different with that. I come into my layouts. Here's another possibility. Maybe this is how I'd like to show it. So it gives us a lot of flexibility for how we can show information, once again, in a more graphical, more appealing way than just a simple list. Additionally, you can apply different styles to it. It can look a little bit more shaded or three-dimensional, and even change the colors for it. That's the idea of smart art. Now, what if you already have a list? Well, this is easy too. I've got a bullet list. That's pretty boring for a presentation, so I'll just select this placeholder. And in the Home tab, we have this option in the paragraph group, and this is for converting to smart art. So what I'll do for this one, let's say I can hover over these and see which one do I like better. Well, let's just try this one. So once again, in just a couple clicks, I've now taken that same content and now I've converted it to smart art to make that more appealing. Those are some things to explore in terms of working with smart art and how it can help you to create much more visually interesting graphics, still taking your key business content. So that is another option for you to consider. So smart art is available also in Word and Power and Excel, but we see it primarily, certainly in PowerPoint. Another way for us to really work with our graphics and to have a lot of, take advantage of a lot of options is to work with built-in stock images. So stock images are absolutely free. We don't have to worry about paying a license. We don't have to worry about violating copyright. And these are all things that are important. That's one of the things you need to be really concerned about or to watchful of is just because something is found through a Google search doesn't mean that you have the right to be able to use it and put it into a presentation. So you need to have either royalty free or something you've paid a license to use, or better yet, take advantage of the built-in stock images. So what does this mean? Well, let's look at some different options here. Here I have this simple title slide, not too bad. I'm going to just duplicate that, Control D, because now what we'll do, we're going to go ahead and insert an image to this. So I'll insert pictures and stock images. So the first thing to know, stock images, it's really more than what that name describes. Here we have images, so these are photos, concepts, those types of things. And know as well that these are continually added to. So for instance, here we can see what the new options are. These are all new images and that will continue to be added to. So this is part of having a Microsoft 365 subscription. It's just built in. Now, in addition to the images, we have icons. We saw some of that with our design ideas. We have cut out people. So this gives us the ability to add different images of people. And as you'll see, because it has this checkerboard, that means that it has a transparent background. And then we can overlay that over different slide content. And they're even categorized by different people. So if we wanted to have a theme of just particular people doing various things, the same person, we would be able to build off these different groups. So that would be another option. We have stickers, and stickers and cartoon people, I would say, tend to fit best with, education or maybe some personal examples. But videos, now stock images are also available in Word and Excel, but videos is only available in PowerPoint. And illustrations. So I'll give you some different examples as we continue forward with that. But first, let's add an image here. I'll call it chocolate. And we can see lots of yummy possibilities here. And as we come through here, I think I'll pick this one. And notice this is inserted into this title slide, but this also triggers the designer. So now that I've added that image, maybe this is the title slide I'll use, or this one. That is, we have that flexibility now that we have this image that the designer has built the layout for us. So it's pretty amazing. So explore how you might be able to leverage these stock images in multiple ways. Let's look at a couple other examples here. So as an employee benefit, unlimited chocolate for all employees. Well, we want to show some very excited people. So we'll come to stock images. We'll go to our cutout people. And let's say that I want to say excited. So they are just thrilled. Yay, we get free chocolate. Maybe I'll add this one and this one. And now, because they had that transparent background, notice what happens here. Oops, I just want one at a time. There we go. Now, I might need to resize these, make them a little bit smaller. That's okay. I'm just selecting them, grab the corner, don't ever grab the sides because we want to make sure that we maintain the proportions on it. And so now I've been able to add these to my slide. So just to give you some different ideas, and notice the designer is giving me even more options here once I've added those images. So explore how that might be helpful for you. Here's another way we can use those stock images. I'll insert pictures, stock images, but this time we'll look at illustrations. So this is something that can be really helpful for us. We just want to show a concept, for instance. And because of the topic here, I think I'll pick this. For technology, you can see just a few other, examples of what I might choose. Now, I didn't mention when we were looking at that, but you might have noticed that there was this kind of this gold accent color, and you don't have to worry about that because notice that that changed here to match the theme colors. So the theme colors, we find that under design, and we'll have then our different options in terms of these variants, and here's our colors. So that's the thing that the Slide Master holds as well as the various theme colors. So it automatically updated here. I'll kind of move this into the corner, but maybe I'm not, I really don't like that particular accent color here. I can change that really easily. I've selected the image. We'll go to graphics format and graphics fill. I think I'd like to use that blue instead. So notice how easily I'm just hovering over it. I can change so that I've updated that illustration to match the theme and customized it. And now I have just a little bit more appealing image or graphic here as well. Let's try another option in terms of working with this. All right, well, let's repeat that insert, picture, stock images. And for this, I'll go to icons. So we try my chocolate request again. Here's an icon for chocolate. All right, well, that doesn't look very delicious. It's not even maybe the color I'd expect, but we can change that. We saw that before under graphics format. Here's graphics fill, and I can pick a color that might be a little bit more appropriate to it. So I was able to insert it, I could size it, and even recolor it. So that is another use of our stock images. And finally, we can add some video. So with this then, the video, I can insert pictures, stock images, and we'll look at video. As you might guess, my search term, chocolate, and we'll add this. So I'll insert this. Now with this, you can see the designer is coming up with some different possibilities. How do I want to show this? And when this video is selected, we have options under video format and playback. So this gives the ability to say, for instance, maybe I want this to play full screen when I'm running the presentation. That would be a possibility. I could test how this looks by just simply clicking on this within my presentation. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how we might use these videos, but it could just be for a simple accent. Let's come back here to our simple title slide, and I'm going to repeat that video. We'll add that in. And notice that how the designer is showing it as an option, for instance, for our title slide. So we would be able to have that be a couple different possibilities. And if I ran that presentation, then we would see that. So that would be another way where you might not just have a video, you might have it be a part of an existing presentation. So consider all the different ways you might be able to use these stock images and how they might work for you. All right, let's go ahead then and look at a few other really powerful and helpful options for us in terms of how we can organize our presentations, what are some different possibilities, and then we'll wrap up with some presentation tools. So I have another presentation here that I'm going to move to the slide sorter. So that's one of the tools I've added to that quick access toolbar because it's really handy to switch back and forth and easier, I find, than using the one that's in the status bar. So you'll notice that this particular presentation has been organized with what are called section slides. Now the section slides, this is actually a layout option. It's typically when we add a slide, it's what we would call a section header. It might have other names, but it's just a type of slide. And it's really helpful to first, you want to make sure that you have a presentation that is organized, where you have clear main topics. And it might only be 2 or 3 or 4, depending upon the length of your presentation. And so how can you designate those key main topics? Section slides are a great way to kind of showcase and show that you are shifting from one topic to another. So you'll see that these particular examples here, smart art, animations, all of these are different section slides. Now, not required with that. But one of the things it's not required, but one of the things that has, but also we could do is to actually add physical sections to this. So what does that mean? Well, I'm going to right click here and say add section. Now, before I do that, let me back up for just a moment and show you. Here's a section that says charts and tables. So for this, I'll add a section for the topic, which is smart art. And I'll add one for animations. Now, I don't have to do that, and it's not determined by the fact that there are section slides here. But how is this helpful? Well, with a large presentation, we could collapse these sections. That way they're not, maybe that's not our focus. And even, for instance, if we're in the normal view, we could collapse these and we could see and then focus on specific slides there or expand it. So that's one of the ways that those sections can be helpful to you, whether or not you have section slides. But for this next piece that I'll share with you, it's really helpful for us to have section slides because we're going to create basically a Zoom summary. So what does that mean? It gives us a way to create interaction in a presentation. So think about onboarding, training, those types of things where it might be self-paced, or maybe you have multiple people giving the same presentation and you want to make it very organized for them. So let's look at what that might be. What I'm going to do here, and I can just be at the beginning of the presentation, doesn't matter. I'll choose Insert. And here is Zoom. This is also only available in PowerPoint 365. And I'm going to create a summary Zoom. So it's going to, if we did not have those sections, it's going to have the option of creating those sections. And that gets back to the need for having an organized presentation. It can't just be a bunch of slides just thrown together, because that is not only not helpful to your audience, but it's also not a very helpful way to present the content. So the assumption with this Zoom is that you have clear sections, whether or not you have section slides. Well, I don't need this first introductory one, but you can see because I had those sections already defined, it has a check mark next to those. If I did not already have defined sections, it will create those for me. So we're just looking at these different sections. So if I didn't already have those defined, then we could come in and pick particular slides as being the key sections or portions for this presentation. Now, based upon what's selected, I'm going to go ahead and insert. And so it's going to create a separate slide that is giving me these sections. These are clickable links to those slides. Now I can just use this one, but instead I'll select this. Let's try that again. There we go. Sometimes I could just click into it, but we'll go ahead here. I'll copy this, drop it, paste it into a different slide that has a little bit more design elements to it. I don't really need this slide anymore. And let's see how this works. I'm going to launch the presentation. Here I've added up, for instance, to my quick access toolbar that I want to start from this slide. And so I'll go ahead and do that. Shift F5 is another way to do it. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to go to the topic here of smart art. Notice it's a clickable link. And by the way, those section slides have little icons in them that came from the stock images. So all of these things are working together. Design ideas, sections, and with this, I'll click on it. It actually zooms in and moves to that slide. And notice as I move through these various slides, and it zooms back out to take me to this, think of it like a table of contents. So that could be really helpful for certain PowerPoint presentations where you could still be the presenter or where it could stand alone. Consider how that might be really helpful as you are building your presentations. First of all, to build in the organization, and second of all, to be able to leverage some of these various tools that we have here. And in this case, the ability to then be able to use this as a Zoom. Now, I'm going to escape on this for just a moment. And one of the things that happens is that when we've added a Zoom, we have this Zoom toolbar. So the reason why it behaved that certain way is because it actually had those choices here to Zoom transition, coming in and out, and return back to the Zoom. So this becomes kind of the landing place. It doesn't have to be the very first slide, but it simply becomes a great way to enable, and you can see even which slides it's representing. So explore how that might be really handy for you as well. So what are those options for you? Now, we could leverage that a little bit differently. And here I have a presentation that is it has just kind of agenda, topics, etc. So there's some different things that we can do here to create this kind of table of contents. Let me just show you a quick example. One might be to build a hyperlink. So a hyperlink is also a helpful way to create navigation. I'm just going to select this, and then we'll go to and look at Insert and Link. And we want to insert a link. Now, Control K is a great way to do that. So what I want to do with this is I could link this to an existing file. That is, it could be a resource, a PDF, an Excel file, another PowerPoint, but I just want to go to place in this document. So I'd like this to be a link to another slide. So here we have one called Benefits, and I'll OK. And now let's see how this works. If I launch this presentation, remember Shift F5 is a way I can do that. It's a clickable link, and I click on this, and it takes me right to that slide. Now, if I want to get back to where I was, that was slide 2. I'll type a 2 and hit Enter. Well, one of the things that we also have in this presentation is something called an action button. So I'll show you really briefly how an action button works. Here we've got this idea here. I'll click on Topics, and it takes me back. So these are some of these were built in. Well, how do we build that? What we basically are going to do here, I'll start here on this Benefits one, is it is a shape. So Insert, Shapes, and at the very bottom here, it can be a little hard to pick up here, but there are action buttons. So these might be for the next slide. It could go to the home, and there's different choices that are built into it. But I'm going to pick this last one, a blank one, and simply draw out. Know that you can always fix it later. I'm going to draw out a little, basically a button. And what I want that to do is it will be a hyperlink to, and we can pick a slide. Well, I want to pick a specific slide, so the last or previous won't work, but you can see that there's a lot of, it could even be to a web link, a lot of different things. And I want this to go back to my agenda or my topics. So we'll say OK and OK. And I'll right click on here, edit text, and type in here topics. And then this could be formatted. We could change the color of the button. We could change the type, size, or color of the text. But hopefully that gives you kind of an idea. That is, if now, here again, I could click on this and it will take me right back there. Another way that we could do this, though, is with a zoom. So this is another way to leverage that zoom. Let's look at this. Insert, Zoom, and this is called a slide zoom. Slide zoom. Well, basically, we're going to create a hyperlink or a clickable link to go back to a particular slide. So here's my agenda, my topics. I'll insert that, and it actually has a clickable picture of that. So we could just drop this right into a place, and each one of the slides, once we have it, we could just copy it. And let's see how this works. Once again, I launch it. Shift F5 would be another way. And we wouldn't have both. We don't need to have an action button and this, but this is clickable, takes me right to it. So that is how the zoom can work for us, as well as how we can leverage this idea of hyperlinks and action buttons. So all sorts of ways to create more interactive, more effective presentations that really give us a lot more flexibility. So hopefully you've got some great ideas from that. Let's wrap up with one more, and that is, once you put in all of this work to create these presentations, you've customized your slide master, you've used tools like Smart Art and stock images and the designer to really create nice looking presentations. You've organized your content. Now it's time to present it. So what are some of the tools that will help you with that? Let's go ahead and look at that. A lot of this is just some nice shortcut keys that are helpful for us. Now we saw earlier that we can run a presentation a number of different ways. I added some options to my quick access toolbar, but I could also hit the F5 function key. Shift F5 is a way to run the slideshow from the current slide if you just want to test out the options. So these are some really handy keyboard shortcuts. F5 to run from the beginning, Shift F5 to run it from the current slide. Now, to advance forward, I can use my right arrow, I can click with my mouse, I can hit enter. Another keyboard shortcut, and a way to see a list of keyboard shortcuts, is to hit the F1 function key. Now, no, just like you can see right here, your audience will see this. So this is going to display on the screen, but it gives you options for being able to navigate, how to move in and out, some different ways for you to work with it. So this is a great way for you to get some other shortcuts that are available to you. Or you could right click for a shortcut menu. Now this will give you, once again, your audience will see it, but this gives you navigation and lets you leverage a lot of presentation tools as well, some of which I'll share with you in just a moment. So this is another way for us, for instance, to move through our slides, to be able to see that. And I could see all my slides, for instance. I could click back on that. I could switch to the presenter view. That's definitely a good one to explore, and other options as well. So what are some other shortcuts? Well, it's really helpful for you, especially with a lengthy presentation. If you have a handout, ideally just a printed handout with the slide numbers, or you could create a little cheat sheet. That way, if you're running out of time, remember, go back to that, having a good structure to it, a good organization to it. So if I know, well, I'm running out of time, but I want to move to this next section. Well, if you know what that number is, then you could just type in that slide number. So that would be a way for you to move to that. So if I wanted to go to that second slide, I could just type in 2 and hit enter. Now, I don't have to have the slide numbers in the corner, but you might notice that that is one of the things I'm displaying. I want to go back to where I was before. That's 4 and enter. So if we know what the slide number is, then we can easily jump rather than flipping through them. You've seen that. I'm sure you've seen a lot of presenters that are just clicking through a bunch of slides that they have to skip, and we lose a lot of attention and professionalism in navigating in that way, or we escape out of the presentation, even worse, trying to find where we want to go. So if you can jump back and forth to those, that is really handy. But what if you don't know what that slide number is? Well, you've got some other options. You can press Control S. Now, Control S, when we're not in the presentation, is the slide selector. It is say, but here we can say, okay, I'd like to, maybe I want to go to this one, for instance. Here's maybe my last one here. That would be one way. So Control S. Now I want to go back to where I was. Okay. So that becomes some different ways for us to work with it. Or press the letter G for go to. And we saw this view before. This shows you all the slides, so it's easy to navigate it to it, but we're still in the presentation. So that's really handy for us as well. So try those shortcuts as some other ways to really make it much more fluid for you to be able to present. The home and end key, these are also handy to go to the first or last slide. And when you are presenting, let's say that the subject matter changes. Now we're talking about something that isn't even part of our topic. That is, where it may be that it's an important conversation, but it's not what we're displaying. And you've probably had this experience. You're staring at a slide that's completely unrelated to what we're talking about. Well, instead, we can just simply change the screen. I could type a letter B to change the screen to black, or W to change it to white. Now, when you're in the Zoom meeting or webinar platform, when you type the B, it doesn't work. So just know I will see this as black, but your audience will not. Now the W does work. So another option for you is to have just kind of a placeholder slide that you can move to at any time. So this just is a way, it could be your company logo. It could be something just that you can kind of rest on or pause on without having to exit the presentation, but then you're no longer looking at something that's not really related to your topic. Additionally, there are some annotation tools. Now, you may find that some of these are helpful for you. Let me just give you a quick rough way to work with them. It could be that you have a diagram or you have a quarterly summary of some financials. Make sure that you don't have a lot of detail though, because that is something that can be very difficult to read. But the idea here is if I do Control P, I'm changing to a pen and I could draw. So mine just look kind of like scribbles. They're not really maybe that helpful, but if I wanted to highlight this, I could do that with my mouse. Now I can also right click here if I wanted to change then the color of it. So I'll change it to green. And here I'll just scribble some more just so that you can see that. If I wanted to erase just a part of it, Control E, now my mouse becomes an eraser. I could just click something specific. Or the letter E to erase all. Control A brings me back to an arrow. I can keep those annotations and they can be saved with the presentation, or you can clear them at the end of the presentation. Control I changes your mouse to a highlighter. So for these, you do need to be close to your computer. Whereas if it is an in-person presentation, I recommend that you are not standing right at your laptop the whole time. So you are engaging with your audience. Control I takes that off. Laser is not an annotation, but what this will do, it is a way to create a way to kind of add some focus on the screen. But just as if this was a laser on a remote, you need to move really slow. Otherwise, this is not going to be helpful for your message. Control L would turn that off again. So it's a toggle. Anytime you want to hide the mouse, Control H, Control A, or Control U will bring it back as well. You can also enable subtitles in PowerPoint. Now, in this case, I don't believe I set it up ahead of time. That is a good idea. That's always good to set that up. Know that subtitles is enabled and an option in Teams, Microsoft Teams, and in Zoom. But if I type a J, what it will do, I will check my settings here. And yep, I need to make sure I change it to the microphone. So it gave me that option. Good. And you can see that I'm getting my subtitles that are showing up at the bottom of the slide. This helps us to make sure that we are inclusive with our communication, that it becomes easy for everyone to pick up on the communication, what we're saying, and it is one of their other options. So know that Zoom supports it, Teams supports it as well. I'll go ahead and turn this off for right now. A couple other quick tips as we wrap up. I can also hit the plus key to zoom in, and then you can use your mouse to zoom into that specific area. Now keep in mind, that doesn't excuse having something that's too detailed or has too much content, but know that you do have that option. I'm going to use the minus to zoom out. And if I keep doing that, I get back to that view for my slides. So another way to move to it. And then of course, escape, end the show. Do I want to keep those notations as beautiful as they were? I'll go ahead and discard them. So that becomes some other tools that you should add to your PowerPoint toolkit. I hope you've had multiple takeaways from these PowerPoint tips and tricks, some different ways for you to leverage your PowerPoint skills and to really be have more attractive, more effective presentations and to be able to deliver them more successfully. Appreciate that you've joined us today. We're off for these K-Square Technology webinar, training webinars on the second Tuesday of each month. Coming up, we have Microsoft Excel, Power Query, and in December is mail merge techniques with Microsoft Word. Following the session, you will see a quick survey pop up. Please do complete that survey to let us know what topics you might be interested in seeing in the future. That has been our look at time-saving PowerPoint tips. Let us know, how can we help you to be more productive? Please reach out to us for IT services and consulting to support you with Microsoft technologies. Thanks for joining us.